Now if Christ is proclaimed as raised from the dead, how can some of you say there is no resurrection of the dead? If there is no resurrection of the dead, then Christ has not been raised. And if Christ has not been raised, then our proclamation has been in vain, and your faith has been in vain. 1 Corinthians 15, 12 through 14.
So this is the fuel filler here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this hose clamp off and separate this hose from the filler neck. So that is an 8mm socket. Okay, so I have the clamp removed, and judging from the looks of this hose, I may need to replace it. Probably what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this bracket here off as well, so that the filler neck will slide out of that. So that is a 13mm. So here is one of the connections for the shroud here, and this is a push pin. And so what has to happen is this lower piece here has to be popped out, and then you have to get underneath that piece and pry the push pin out. Okay. So the lower part is down, and there you have it. So, and I believe there is one of the push pin holes that I've already removed on the side, and here is the other one. And then we'll go to the one on the back and remove it. Okay, and there's the hole for the last hole for the push pin that I have removed. And this whole piece just comes out like so. And then you have to release the clips right there on the side. And so to remove this shroud, I'm just sliding it towards the front of the vehicle. And it comes out that way. I just stuck it over here between the muffler and the drive shaft and pulled it out through this gap here. And so that exposes this other side of the strap that holds the gas tank on. And so I'm going to go ahead and try to loosen that bolt. And then there's one more that's a little further down there. And there are 3 fuel line disconnects here. 1, 2, 3. And there are little plastic fittings here that you have to depress I believe it's this plastic clip on the metal part of the hose that clips into the black part of the hose. Okay, so getting these fuel lines loose was proving to be pretty difficult. So kind of what I settled on here is the method that worked was I put a pair of vice grips around the black plastic piece right there, and I put it on the top and the bottom like it's shown here, so that the hole is exposed. And so what that does is if we look at this one up here, it kind of forces that loop that's over this clip right here open. Okay, so it's not catching on the lip anymore. And then, because I don't have a lot of leverage there to pry on it or anything, I stuck this bolt through this hole with the fuel lines in the rail, and then I just put that on the end. So I use this upper one as an example. just put it on the end of that plastic right there, and then I hit it with a hammer, and you know, through several taps, you can see this one is the middle one there is most of the way out. So I was able to drive it out that far. But try this method where you put a pair of vice grips on around the black part of the plastic hose to, you know, squeeze the hose down so that the plastic part of the clip won't catch on it, and then drive it out in that direction. That seemed to do the trick. Now under the truck here, I can't really show you, but and hold the camera at the same time. But that's what worked for me. And so that's what it looks like with just the clip on there and the hose. The hose removed. There's the hose. There's the hole I'm talking about. And that little clip just goes on there like that. And so you can replace that clip, and that's probably advisable, because that one, after you have torqued on it, is not in so good a shape. And so I may try to clean that line up a little bit, or maybe just put it back in there and hope it doesn't leak. But you can also get new lines. I saw those online. So it depends on how much money you want to put in an old beater like this. So. Okay, so you can see, using the same method with the bolt and just pounding on the end of that thing, I was finally able to get that off of there, and still relatively in one piece. So it looks like the O-ring has come out on this one. So probably, if I can get one of those, I'll probably replace those O-rings as well. So, anyway, 2 out of 3. So I'll probably try the same method on the other one. Okay, the next thing that I'm doing here is taking off there's a bolt or a screw here, and a screw here, and then 2 screws down here. And I removed all those. Those are Torx bits, and then that allows this thing just to slide out like that. And the fuel filler neck is right here, and so I'm trying to disengage this from the hose that attaches it to the tank. And that is the screw. It's a T15 Torx bit that holds the fuel door shroud on. And so this is the hose that I'm talking about right here, that attaches to the tank. I removed the hose clamp, and now I'm trying to slide the fuel filler out of there so that when I drop this tank, I'll be able to get this get the tank down, and it won't be able to move these cables out of the way and everything, and I can drop it straight away. So here's the filler neck and the rubber hose that extends out into the tank. It's there. So I bought one of these fuel or multi-use transfer pumps, it says, and so the idea here is I'm going to try to get as much gas out of the tank as I can so that it's easier to handle when I drop it down. Okay, so removing that fuel filler allowed me to insert this red suction hose into the tank. Before I was having trouble feeding it down through the filler neck. It wasn't getting to the gas, but when I took that out, I was able to get this down into the gas, and so I'm siphoning
the gasoline into the can, so that way the tank will be lighter than when I try to drop it down. So this is the bolt that came out of the strap on the inside of the vehicle, and you can see that it's pretty short, and the one on the outside is about 4 inches long. So I'm going to try to just take these out and loosen the outer ones so that I can turn the straps out of the way. So that's the hole that that bolt came out of, and here's the strap, which is now loose, which I may be able to get it past that drive shaft. Okay, really, this was a lot easier than I thought. All I did was just put a little bit of pressure on there, and then this thing loosened up because, you know, it requires that other one for it to be tight, so it just is very loose, and this thing can just turn easily, so I won't even have to take these bolts out. Okay, so you can see that I was easily able to get that past. I just had to bend it straight and then bring it down between the tank and the drive shaft and just swing it out of the way. So it's pretty simple. And I'll just take the other one down. I'll support the tank, unloosen the bolt, and then slide the other one probably towards the rear, and then I should be able to get the tank down. Okay, so I have my floor jack in there, jacking up against a piece of wood. Just a piece of plywood is what I used. It only covers about the middle portion of the tank. And so now I'm going to take that last bolt out of the rear strap and swing it out of the way, and I should be able to lower that tank to the ground. Okay, so I made this job a whole lot harder for myself by using a long breaker bar. That's not the long breaker bar, but I used a long breaker bar to try to get the nut, or the bolt rather, to come out of there. Now that rail, this is for the strap here that holds the tank up. And so because I put all that leverage on there, I broke the weld nut that's inside this tube loose. And so obviously I didn't have that far enough out to get a hold of it. So I did find that if I put a 12-point 7/8 socket down or through this hole, and that's a 3/8 inch drive ratchet, that's the only way I could get it to fit in there. I can hold it, but not enough to turn this bolt, because it, you know, requires a whole lot of torque to turn that bolt. And so what I've elected to do is to take the longer bolt out of the other side and only use a short lever ratchet on it rather than the long one, so that hopefully I don't break that bolt loose over there. And I would recommend not using a long breaker bar on this bolt over here and just working the bolt back and forth until you can get it out, and you know, applying a lot of penetrating oil along the way, because this made this job a whole lot harder. So because that other bolt is like 4 inches long, so it takes a lot more work to get it out. And one other thing, I didn't want to try to cut that bolt off of there while the gas tank was right there, because sparks and empty or open gas lines don't mix very well. So do not want to have an explosion here and hurt myself, maybe fatally. So I figure I'll try to take the tank out and before risking having sparks back here. And then when I get the tank out, then you know, perhaps I can either drill that out or cut it off with a cutoff wheel. So okay, so there you can see the bolt on the other side. And so what I'm doing is I'm just turning that couple turns loose, and then, well, maybe 3 turns, well, 2 turns loose and 3 turns tight. And then, you know, each time I loosen it, I spray a little bit of penetrating oil up in there. And then, you know, when I tighten it, I put it back in. So hopefully that will lubricate that and keep it from getting too hot, and and just using a regular socket, so that, or a regular ratchet, so that I don't put too much torque on it to keep from breaking the bolt off, or the nut off. Okay, so that nut on top is a lock nut, and you need to loosen that up and get it down in order to make that easier for it to come down. And so it still takes a while, but that will help. Okay, there's the bolt that's out, and so get an idea how long it is. And that took me about an hour, maybe an hour and a half of messing with that, and a little bit at a time, and get it out of there. But it is possible. Okay, so now the weight is on the jack. I've swung this strap out of the way, and the other one's out to that side over there, and so I'm ready to lower the jack. Okay, I have an assistant to help me drop this tank, so go ahead. Right. Ho, 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 ho.
Too far. Wasn't correctly balanced.
Okay, so we got a little bit of rocking towards the rear of the vehicle. So let me stop the video here. Okay, so what I'm hanging up on here is the hose. Smooth that by there. So now we should be completely free. You see anything? Anything?
Nope.
Looks good. All right, so now it doesn't appear that I'm high enough to roll it out, so I'm gonna just scooch the jack out from underneath it, and then we should be able to just slide it on the floor. Okay, so here's the tank, and these are the 3 fuel lines that I took loose, and on the other side you can see this is the wire that I took loose, runs along the side and up under there, and then I have to, I think I just lift this off. Yeah, lift that off, and that exposes the fuel sending unit, and we'll revisit this when I'm ready to change that out. We were going to go back and try to get that bolt out of the strap that I broke. Okay, so I've decided to go ahead and cut that off. I tried holding it, and it just doesn't, the socket doesn't hold on to that nut in there very well, and you can't really put any torque on it. So, and I believe this bolt is hard, so it would take me forever to drill through it. So I'm going to try to cut it off. I'm probably going to make an X this way, and then cut another thing that way, and use a chisel and see if I can knock it off of there. Alright, so that is the weld nut, and comparing it to the other one, so I just sectioned it, cutting I guess probably 6 or so times across there, just cutting across, cutting grooves in that, so it went all the way down through the nut head, or through the bolt head. And then I took a chisel and knocked each one of the pieces off, and and it came out.